Turning the YouTube live on. Just bear with me for a minute. Ah, I have been to talk somewhere. Hello, everybody. I'm Sudha Jamthe. Hello, everybody. Okay, I'm just hearing my voice. I have a window saying unmute myself. Okay. Okay. So I think we're live. So hello, everybody. I'm Sudha Jamthe, and this is our weekly Wednesday live, a fun part of my week where I get to talk to you about a fun topic. Whole of last year, we were talking about autonomous vehicles and what does autonomous vehicle business mean and data in the car. And it naturally led us to AI in the car. We spent a lot of time in the second half of last year about data monetization and AI in the car. And towards the end, we started talking about AIXDesign, which has become my new topic. A new course called that's my older course called Autonomous Vehicle Business at Stanford. My newest course is called Artificial Intelligence Bootcamp for Product and Business Managers. And it's very more focused this time, happening in Stanford Continuing Studies, March 14th and 15th. And I have been talking to you about AI in various forms. And we started the year saying, okay, where do we focus? Where do we pivot? What areas of innovation do we focus on? I think that was our very first session. And then from there, we picked up on the topic of AI and, here we are. So we've been talking about AI models and how do we build the model from existing algorithms using enterprise data. And we went through that. In fact, we even did a parallel session from here. After we finished, we did a chat session on LinkedIn. So if you're new to this, if you go to Driverless World School on in there is a course called Livestream Lessons. And I'm hoping that's where you came from. And I also have next to the YouTube window that you see from where you joined, also have the LinkedIn one. So you can go there where we had the discussion about the AI model. You can jump in, have a conversation, tag in people who are experts or who would benefit from the conversation. So this is our place to share resources, not just talk to me here because I'll go away in an hour. And for those of you who are new, this session will be archived and will stay here. I have a piece of sun coming up right here. Looks a little funny. I'm hoping it's not going to be moving up my face like that. That'll be very strange. Okay. So I see people. So the way we do this is it's a Q&A. So today's topic is anomaly detection, and we'll talk about it. Ask me questions, and we will have other experts who are working on this topic for around the world. So hopefully, this would be a fun conversation and not a monologue. I do have some slides to kind of guide the conversation, but your questions are the most important one. Okay, so I am going to go to see what's going on in YouTube. Oh, I already see people. Okay, I see Omkar. Hi, Omkar says hi. Kishore says hi. Good morning. And hi, Omkar. They're both having a conversation. Thank you for joining me, guys. This is the Vigorsoft team, and they're joining us from India. It's pretty late for you. I appreciate that. It's just morning for me, and you're my first cup of coffee. So, okay. So we're going to be talking about anomaly detection. So I would like to get us on the same page. And since we have Kishore and Omkar here, I wanted, and they are experts who work on actually building AI models, helping enterprise customers. And I believe Kishore was here actively adding to the contribution here and on LinkedIn when we were talking about building AI models and what's the reality of it. Okay. Okay. So question for you, and I see more people watching than the number of people chatting. It happens always. So you benefit when you engage not just with me, but everybody else on the YouTube chat. And so feel free to introduce yourself or listen in and jump in when you feel like that's okay too. And we have an international bunch of people. So think about it. Even if you're working on this area or you're interested in learning this topic, you get a introduction and you get to hear about what other people are doing in the same space. And so you kind of get to make friends and, connect with the community. Okay, so hi Dalton. So there we've got two people from India and Kishore and Omkar, and then Dalton just joined us from Sao Paulo. Again, I think it's lunchtime for Dalton, so thank you for joining, Dalton. So we're talking about anomaly detection. So to kick it off, I want us to get to the same page. What is an anomaly? An anomaly is something that's not normal. And in data, it just means an outlier. So can we start off with an example? What would you see? You could give me a real enterprise client situation, or we could just give me an example of what is an anomaly. And I want to hear from you. You can chat your answer away. Give me an example of what is an anomaly. And I'm obviously thinking about data here. So if you have a certain normal behavior, if you're collecting data, then if something is different, that's an anomaly. So I have sun here on my face and it is showing up right here. Looks funny. So if I'm looking at my past videos of my weekly Wednesday chat on Wednesdays, which I have for more than a year's time now, all of this year, all of last year, and I think we started the beginning of last year. So we have about 40 something plus hours of video conversations that we've had on various topics. And for those of you who are new, it's all archived on Livestreamed lessons. You just join in here for free and have a conversation. But if you're interested in going back and learning this topic, then I have like a membership area at $9 per month and you can take it. I'm referring to that now because if you go look at that video, I don't remember seeing sun like this on my chin. That's an anomaly. And if I go look at all the data, look at all those video feeds of different sessions, and I say, what was the best light setting for me? And sometimes I've had light on my face here. I have a light ring light in front of me. I don't have that on. Sometimes I get light from there, so I arrange my setting usually like that. And I have never seen light fall like this on my chin, and that's an anomaly. So something that's out of the ordinary. So if I sift through that data, or if I have a job that runs through that data and finds out where it's different, because if I have to do it on video, it would be some kind of computer vision, looking at images and then spotting this image which has light here. And that is an anomaly. Okay, so let's see what other people are saying. Kishore is saying, I think fraud in financial world is an anomaly. Yeah, the most common example is if there is a pattern by which you make purchases and see the light has moved, and no, it's not an anomaly anymore. So it's only in that initial frame. Okay, so so if there's a abnormal pattern, and I'm so glad you brought that, Kishore. I love your example, especially you come from a place of experience working with clients. The most common example that we can all relate to is there is the credit card companies or banks are always looking for anomalies in behavior, and then they want to protect our account and they lock it up. So the other day, I went to Bank of America to the ATM to withdraw money, and they had a touch screen, and they had two ATMs, in the same location. And they had a touch screen where they said, what denomination do you want your money in? And I had to press, and there was an arrow which goes up or down. I did that. For some reason, it did not work. And it got stuck. It basically, it was giving me $100 and $20 combination. I didn't want $100. And when I tried to increment the $20, it just didn't move after a certain point. I tried that. I reset that transaction. I tried again. And I realized when I came back to the exact same point of asking for so many 20s, it stopped after a certain point. And I thought, the screen is not working with the touch screen part. I should just withdraw and take it in whatever denomination they give. So they had a setting for them to choose the combination, and I could do that. So I closed this transaction because I didn't proceed with this because it was stuck. And I thought maybe and I saw next to me, there was another lady who was withdrawing money. And I said, oh, that other ATM looks like it's working. So I went to the other ATM, which was just in the same location, but just next to it. And it allowed me to go through. And as soon as I entered my PIN, it just locked my account. It said, just for your safety, we've logged your account, and come talk to us. And then I had to go and call customer support and figure out and all that stuff and they had to unlock my account. So see, the light has come back again. So if I'm going to have this continuously, not just today, but if this is going to be a new pattern, I don't remember at this time around Valentine's Day last year whether I had it. And this is important because when you're looking for an anomaly, I was not planning to demonstrate it with my own face, like lighting up funny. But it's important to see whether this is the behavior that happens, not just this light, but I'm keeping the light as the example, whether it happens seasonally. So seasonally, if the sun is going to be at this place just before Valentine's Day, the angle of it, then maybe I should anticipate that, not have my curtains open that much, or maybe have my ring light saying in Feb it happens between Feb 12th to Feb 28th. This is the angle of the sun and I'm going to get light on my face and I should pull my curtains. Would be an action I would take if I see that pattern. So when we are looking at anomaly, back to the finance fraud example, there could be something that's a seasonality thing. And so you look for patterns and then you say, okay, I'm going to make sure that this happens at this time of the day or this time of the year, that kind of thing. And you kind of eliminate that to still look for patterns. So what Bank of America did was that I do not not just me, typically their customers don't come and try to make more than 2 transactions. Maybe somebody would do a transaction and they might forget something because I went through, I entered my PIN right? So somebody might do 2 transactions, but when they did the third transaction, then that was an anomaly. It flagged potential fraud. And they said, okay, I need to protect this account. Like Kishore said, this is an example of the finance example of fraud protection. And the other interesting thing is it was not just in the same ATM. I don't know if I tried the third time in the same ATM, whether it would have triggered the same behavior. Instead, I moved to the next ATM. And sure, they were like, okay, this card is stolen, somebody's got this, and they're moving around. We didn't allow them to, the transaction didn't go through here, and they're trying the next ATM. And they had to lock it. And so what I'm giving you this example, not just as, yes, there's a finance case. One is anomaly, like the light here, which is kind of non-standard behavior. And in the bank example, they're looking for a pattern. And it is not a seasonality thing they're going to eliminate for saying, she comes at this time of the day. Whenever she does a transaction, she does 3 transactions. Maybe when I do it at that location, if there is a number of times I repeatedly try, maybe there is something wrong with the ATM that they need to fix. Finally, that was the problem, that the ATM had a problem with the touch screen. And it went through for other customers who were not going through this choice of denomination pick. And so they did not catch that. And so it just looked like this one isolated customer was displaying this anomalous behavior. Okay. And I have this example because we're going to go back to this to understand anomaly detection and how it is done, because there are different steps to arriving at it, and there's a method to it. And I'm going to pick on this bank example again, because it is not just a rule. Maybe they could have baked a rule. If the customer does more than 2 transactions within this time window, then that is an anomaly. So we will revisit this for definition's sake, because how often does this happen and how prolonged is this anomaly are all patterns that you look for if you think of it as a graph, but we will get to that. So Omkar is saying something exceptional. Yes. So I was asking, if you don't even go to data on customers, just think about where, what an anomaly is, something different from the ordinary, something exceptional, which is from the norm. And then Omkar is saying, yeah, not part of the pattern. Yes, exactly. Thank you. So we've got 2 of those. And then now Dalton is saying, or something not previously input to be considered to be normal. So that is the main thing, because to truly understand anomaly, we need to establish what is normal. It is very easy for me to say, hey, if I come in and do 3 transactions together, it feels suspicious. And so obviously, a bank should say that's a fraud pattern, right? But how do you do that with data? You need to establish what is normal behavior. And so you have to train your model for what is normal behavior. Okay. And then Dalton is saying, as soon as we teach machines something, we don't teach machines. Machine considers as anomaly. So I'm thinking he's thinking of training data. We are giving training data and we are giving something as normal behavior. And then when we give data that is not normal. So we'll get to the how do we train the anomaly model to understand what is normal. So I just want to finish reading what Dalton is saying. So as soon as we teach machine something that we typically don't teach, then the machine considers that an anomaly. So when we give it training data that is kind of, not normal, then it says, okay, I see an anomaly in there. But for this, it's not just unknown for the algorithm. Yeah, but for us, it's not. It's just unknown for the algorithm. Yes. And Charles has joined us. Hi, Charles. Thank you for joining us. We are talking about anomaly detection, and I was asking, give me an example about anomaly just to get us started on the same page. Because what we are going to do is, I'm interested in the business side of AI. And when I'm talking about business side of AI, I believe we need to understand, and we're talking about algorithms and AI models. That's what we've been talking for the last few weeks. And we're talking about anomaly detection. So it is easy to get intimidated saying, here's an algorithm and how do we get the data? So one of the important things in enterprise to get to solve any problem, like 2 weeks back, I believe we did this about customer churn. And how do we actually go through the process of finding customer churn? And if we do anything like that, the business person has to be completely involved in getting that data, because finally that's the only language by which we are talking to the computer to get us the model working. So the business people have to be involved in getting the right data. So that is my calling here to pick a topic, and today's topic is anomaly detection. to help us understand. So it's very easy to say, hey, there was sun on her face a little while back, there's no sun, it's back to normal, because that is what we are seeing as humans. So as Dalton said, we are going to give, how do we communicate that to the model, to the AI? We are going to give data. That's how we communicate. So we give training data. So in the training data, there is something that's a normal, and then something that's out of the ordinary or exceptional, like Omkar was saying, which is an anomaly, which is an outlier. And we need to give that in the training data. Okay, so I am actually going to turn my slides on, because I put something together to drive a conversation, and I have a visual that would help. And so what I'm going to do is I want to go to this place where we're saying, how do we first tell the computer what is normal in our training data? And then how do we make it see what is abnormal? And so it can say, hey, something is out of the ordinary. But what is going to happen is, if it starts looking at every single change that is not normal, then we're going to have a lot of noise. And if we are going to have a lot of notification, so I have a security alarm, and with IoT, you get a lot of streaming data, that's real-time data from the sensors. And so if you're getting the streaming data and then you're inputting that to the system, and then from there it's going to pick an anomaly, it's a challenging exercise. And when it does that, if it says, I see a person, then it becomes it's going to send me a notification. And then we have this alert fatigue, which is basically we keep getting too much alerts, and when we'll tune out. So my security camera is supposed to identify when it sees a person moving outside with the motion sensor, and it doesn't always catch that. So when the sun moves, and today the example, I did not even plan to give the sun example, guys, the sun just showed up on my face and fed us an anomaly. So what happens is the sun moves in a certain angle, and it casts a shadow in front of my house and with the trees, right? The shadow is moving through the day. And when there is a change that of the light with the shadow that the camera thinks is a person, it would actually send me a notification. And I used to get this with the Nest. And at the end of the day, when I go back and move it, I can actually see the shadow moving, and it is, it looks like a shape of a person, and then it goes away. But so there was a time around 3 o'clock or something, based on the sun getting ready to set at that time, this direction, I see that, and the Nest sends me a notification. So then I get notification fatigue or alert fatigue, because around that time, if it was going to send me a real notification of a person outside my door, I'm not going to believe it, because I'm going to tune out saying, it's 3 o'clock, and I get a false positive. And so how do we actually, first, anomaly is something that's out of the ordinary, an exception. So we need to train and feed training data and teach what is normal and what is abnormal. What are the factors it is looking for becomes important. So in an enterprise setting, like the bank example, they're going to have many factors, right? So how often I went and tried to make the withdrawal is just one of the factors. And there's going to be hundreds of factors in the data feed. And so when it is looking for an anomaly, it is looking for anomaly of various factors. And so it could be whether the frequency of the withdrawal is one that it was looking for. There could be others. And so in that case, how do we train it to say we are looking for an anomaly on these factors? And what are those factors? So there are certain metrics, right? One of the metric was the frequency of withdrawal is not more than 2, right? And so it doesn't have to be more than 2. If the normal is 2, that the customer ever does, and then a fraud pattern could have been at 3, then that's what the anomaly. And what if somebody is just trying again and again, and they end up doing more withdrawals? Is it supposed to alert and stop at 3? Because what they're doing is they're catching an anomaly at 3 and they stopped me. but they set a rule saying I'm going to catch it at 3, and then when I see this, I'm going to stop. That means they're responding to the alert. Like I'm tuning out to the 3 o'clock alert from my Nest because it is showing a false positive with the cast of a shadow every day. So if they are going to get a lot of false positives with the 3 times alert, they are going to tune out. So how do you see through the data, and how often is this happening that it becomes important, right? Okay. So I want you to give me another example, because I'm going to go turn on my slide, and I'm going to show you what is the way to do this in an algorithmic fashion. Because when I'm just talking theoretically and I say it's the frequency and the duration, it doesn't mean anything. So I'm going to get the slides and then we can continue the discussion. Kishore and Omkar, since you jumped in the beginning and had answer for what is an anomaly, maybe you have an example, or I want to see. Kishore is saying lots of false positive means we have to tune the data well. Review your data well, and learning process for the models. Yes. So if there are a lot of false positives, so Kishore has gone to the stage where we are training the data, like Dalton was saying. We train the data and we give it what is normal and what is abnormal that we are looking for. And if there are a lot of false positives, so that means he's expecting the model to catch. It's an anomaly detection model, and it is catching the anomaly. And then when there are too many false positives, then it is basically so he's running a model. Now he's validating the model, and then he's saying, okay, this is not right, it is giving a false positive. Now we need to retune the model, which means go back to the data. I heard from Figure 8 is one of the companies which does what they do is they actually do labeling of data. They have a system by which they do it's called human in the loop, where you give the data and you give an example, and then they have actual people doing this, but it's a system. You don't see the people. They label the data and they bring it back to you. So you have a system you're interacting with, but there are actually humans in the loop who are validating the labeling. So there's a combination. I think it's a hybrid approach of the model doing some validation, and then the human confirms, and then they have people in the background. So they do that, and that Figure 8 has a report about the state of machine learning and AI. I don't know if it's called state of AI and machine learning, or state of machine learning and AI. I think that's the right one. They have a beautiful report, and they have very good white papers on their site of how do you train, understanding the state. Talks about how they talk to tech people and the business people who are involved in this whole data modeling exercise to arrive at some kind of AI solution for the enterprise. And 65% of tech people felt they were spending a lot of their time on just cleaning up the data. So you do some kind of pre-processing, data wrangling, some kind of maybe feature engineering, and that's where they're spending more of the time. And then here you get new people from maybe you hire a whole bunch of data scientists early in their career saying, I've learned this model and I played with this from Kaggle, and they want to build exciting models, solve for real problems, and we keep them scrubbing data for a long time. And so how do you do this such that you minimize that, right? So the thing with anomaly detection, you could actually have that as unsupervised learning. So you're not actually telling the model, these are the factors that I'm even looking for. So back to my example, and that there was a light on my face. I'm not going to look for light on my face and whether the sun is going to throw a pattern at me. I would not know that normally. I just want a clean setup. Is the setting right? My picture is not turned. am I facing up straight? Things like that. I might have a certain what is normal acceptable behavior of a picture that I'm going to be here, and then maybe the light could have been one of the anomaly. Maybe my hair is all frizzy, or there could be other things. But if I run this as an unsupervised learning, it is going to catch the factors for me. Okay, so so I want to hear one more example. So especially Kishore, you were talking about the fraud, the finance fraud. Give me an example of too many, you said false positive, but I want specifics, right? So I want an example of where there were too many anomalies thrown that the real anomaly you were trying to catch gets lost. So like the nest example, it keeps alerting me at 3 o'clock every time. Maybe at 3:15 somebody shows up and I ignore them. It doesn't even have to be 3:15. If I assume that it is going to keep showing this regularly, then I'm going to distrust the system. So the thing with AI is it's all about the data. So like Dalton said, we are giving training data where we are saying this is normal behavior, this is abnormal behavior, assuming we know what is abnormal behavior. The second thing is, if there is so much noise in the data, then it's going to throw a lot of false positive, and then we have to retune the whole model, which means you have to get better data to retrain it. But the data is the only communication that we have. So if we are looking for an example where it is showing a lot of anomalies, and because of that, we would lose the real fraud in there. So every time, let's take the bank example. So I went to the bank, it cost them time, right, to offer service for me. So they put an ATM, so they automate the experience. They don't have tellers who have to interact with me. I just withdraw money, I go away. Instead, I tweeted them as soon as I had this account logged up, and I didn't get my money. So I tweeted, the people, customer service people came and said, give me information. They talked to me on DM, and they said, okay, we will help you. And then they located my account and they tried to call me home, which was my number attached to the bank account. And then I was not home, so they left a voicemail, and they said, call me back. And I didn't get to call them at the right time. We played tags, and there was a reference number of this person that I was supposed to call back, and that was kind of lost in my voicemail translation, because now I have a voicemail from home that is translated to text, and it kind of lost that translation so I could not call back. So I tried to call them back, and then I did not have the right number to locate the person who had the continuity of my service request, and so I could not do that. And then I went away. But then I needed my money, and my bank account was lost. And in this case, I'm not a new customer trying to make a purchase, and then I would say, this doesn't work, and would go away. But here, this is my bank, they have my money, and I have a certain loyalty to Bank of America, and I've had that account with them for a long time. And so I went back to the bank physically, finally, which is going to cost them, right? Because they're limiting the number of people who would be there. They want less wait time for people, so they have to put so many people at the teller. So finally, they looked at it, and then they said, I'm a real person. They got my other ID, validated it, and then they walked with me to the ATM, and they said, okay, now try this. We've turned your account back on. And they very casually said, yeah, it must have logged it because it was thinking it was fraud. You're doing it for your own protection. And that is not a scalable model. If they are going to do that with every customer trying to make a ATM request, and at the slightest blip, if there are false positives and it's going to lock accounts, then that's a problem. In my case, if I didn't have the time and bandwidth to go back to the bank, I would not. And I went physically to the ATM to withdraw money so I could go back to the same people. But if I did not have it, then I would have say, oh, I will just transfer this money account to another bank, and I would just withdraw that from the other ATM near work. And then there would be an indirect loss for them, which won't even be connected to the ATM. right? For them, maybe they look at some pattern, some system is looking, this customer who's been active with us is now moving money out. Again, they're doing that at some different rate, and I'm not used to moving out because that's where I do my transaction. And then if I'm moving out, they're going to have somebody saying, I'm looking at customer churn, and this customer is not keeping money with us anymore, is moving out, and what is going on? So there's somebody else going and looking at that as an unrelated to the ATM problem. Yes, they could actually catch whether one of the factors was whether this person had a service request. So remember last to last week when we were talking about customer churn, it is when you're trying to solve a problem, you come up with, you're not going to say, I'm interested in understanding customer churn. You're interested in solving a problem. You're going to say, if the customer churn is high, I want to understand, is it because of service requests? If there is a policy that is not letting them stay happy with us, or if there is a customer churn, how do I create a lift and get my revenues back? So they might be looking at it that way. So if I moved out, then I mean, for me, if I was not able to go back to the bank physically, I had called them. I don't believe they're sitting and saying they're going to maybe think this customer is an expensive customer because they connected on social media, they cost us time on the phone line, they showed up in person. So now I am an anomaly of a person who's very demanding of their time in terms of service, and for no fault of mine, which is a different model. Somebody might be looking, managing churn or engagement of customers and things like that. So there's a lot of things in the finance example. So Kishore, since you gave me the finance example, I went back to that. So when you're looking for patterns in your customer data, there is going to be a lot of different things. So this one ATM, the touch screen not working, is actually created a lot of data in the system of how I've become high maintenance for them. And from my point of view, if they didn't solve this problem, I am not going to be happy at some point. So I was asking for example, and Kishore came through, and Kishore is saying healthcare application, anomaly detection, detecting some abnormal activity with respect to normal body functioning. Yes. So that's a very classic one. Thank you, Kishore. If Kishore, you have so many examples, and we're going to miss you if you don't show up one day. It's late for you, so thank you for joining us from India. So with healthcare, so when I started reading that saying healthcare, my first instinct was, there's a lot of data about looking at normal cells and then looking at pathogens in there. So you look at blood samples, and in there you see something which is a virus, and that's how you detect. That's the example I was thinking. And the interesting thing is, I was introduced to machine learning multiple times, I would say, but the real example I was given where it just was a big aha for me was not at work. So this was in the local middle school. A student who was a high schooler who had just graduated from school came to talk to middle schoolers, and he spoke about machine learning. This is Silicon Valley, guys. Yes, this happens. So this person had come up with some kind of machine learning model because he did not want to read through his notes for his speech and debate club. And so he ran an algorithm. He actually created a model that would scan through his text and find out keywords by which he understood what were the important topics that was being covered. And so that was a machine learning model this kid had done. And obviously, he developed a fascination to machine learning, and he ended up going to college focused on that. So he came back to talk to the 7th graders, and he was showing this example of a blood sample, and it shows, it shows beautiful shape where you can actually catch an anomaly very obviously. So he had this blood sample, and then there were these. He says this looks like a not. He was calling it two different names. One was blob and something, just to make it funny for the kids. And he was trying to find out what was an anomaly. And he was trying to make the point, when you do a regular linear regression, there are points which would not fit close to, though it might not fit close to the line, and whether there would be patterns which are not fitting in one, whether it's not very obvious whether it belongs in one bucket or the other. So he was trying to show that. And so the blood sample was an example that popped up as soon as I heard healthcare. And for me, it was beautiful the way he explained that to the 7th graders to understand that, and made the point. So I believe, Kishore, you're talking about general body function. So it could be that you're looking at going back to the same blood sample. We're not drawing blood, we're just going to the doctors, and you're looking at your temperature. And a normal temperature and a slight deviation from the temperature is okay. But if it's 100 degrees, and I'm talking Fahrenheit, then it's an anomaly, and that would create an alert. And so I'm so happy when Kishore gives me an example, because that feeds into the next topic. And I swear I've not spoken to him about this. So Kishore basically said, healthcare application, anomaly detection, it's detecting some anomaly activity with respect to normal body function. So the temperature is deviant, and you can say that's just another anomaly. So now when we're talking about metrics, there's going to be the temperature as one metric, but does this person have a cough? Do they have a cold? And then they have a temperature, and they have fever. So then a bunch of metrics together adds up. Now it will lead to a diagnosis. So now I think it's time for me to get my my slide up, because I think if I just keep talking this in theoretically, it will not help the case. So we've already covered a lot of topic that I wanted to cover in terms of understanding anomalies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my deck. Okay, hold on for a minute. Let me get the Zoom window shared. Okay, I'm very proud of this picture. So I'm going to show. Do you see just one picture, or do you see a full screen, guys? Do you see a big screen full of clutter, or you just see my one screen? So this is where we started from, and credit for this picture goes to Madhav Mishra. So when you have a normal behavior, the easiest, very obvious one is, yes, there is something that is different. So this is the number we are looking at, like what Kishore is saying. In healthcare, here's your normal temperature. Sometimes it's low, sometimes it's high. So and he said any kind of data compared to normal body function, he was saying. So let's take BP. So the normal BP is supposed to be 120/80, and I typically have low BP. So I'm never going to be at 120. So my highest is at 100. I'm not even at 100. I used to be over 90/70. So that used to be my normal. I go to the doctor because I have this IoT BP monitor, and I'm tracking, and I'm seeing that instead of 90, it becomes 100. So I have 100/70, and I feel like my BP is going up. I go to the doctor. This is real story. And for them, they're saying, okay, normal behavior, something is different, right? Something is deviant. And they see that it's showing at 100. But according to them, their normal expectation was 120. And they said, at 100, it doesn't matter. So what they did is they went back to my past history of what was normal for me. And it turned out that my normal was 90, and now I'm showing 100. And so then they went back to a historic time series and they looked at the past and they said, okay, you have gone from 90 to 100 previously a couple times. So it is okay. So then it doesn't matter. So it is an anomaly. So what I'm getting at is, like Dalton said, we are going to feed training data to say what is normal, what is abnormal, and we are going to catch what is out of the ordinary and exception, which is the anomaly. But every time there is an anomaly, we are actually trying to see whether it is informing us of a real, it's alerting of where some action needs to be taken. So to my BP example, there was an anomaly, but that anomaly did not really matter because it was not a condition, right? It was an anomaly compared to my past behavior, but the truth is it is not something to worry about. Okay, now I'm going to share my slide. I had that picture hanging around somewhere. I ended up sharing that. Okay, are you able to see just my screen? Are you able to see anything else? You should be, yeah. Are you seeing my YouTube screen now? Are you seeing my are you seeing the slide deck? Okay, Omkar has gone to agriculture example. I'm going to come to that. One minute. So can somebody tell me if you're seeing the YouTube screen here with your text around here? Are you seeing the slide deck? Because that is important, because I'm going to show you the slide deck and I want to walk you through something. I need to come back to the YouTube window to look at the questions. Yeah, I appreciate if somebody confirms that, because right now I'm showing the YouTube screen. Are you seeing my slide deck or YouTube? Okay. While you guys confirm, I'm going to look at what Omkar is saying. Omkar is saying in agriculture, the infected plant in part of crop, which potentially, yeah, can spread. So he's taking the same disease example, but in agriculture, it's very, very common to have computer vision, look at images, and then seeing, whether a particular plant, to prune out some of the saplings, what stays, what is a weed, could be a outlier they're looking for, or what plant has some kind of disease that it is needs to be weeded out, and they need to even look for a pattern for that. Is a good example. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the slide deck, and I didn't hear from anybody telling me whether you're seeing the screen here or there. So I'm going to go back to my slide now, but I'll appreciate if somebody tells me whether you're able to see the YouTube screen with the chat window when I switch there, because that's a distraction, because I want to stay on the slides. So we started with what is an outlier is just difference in data. And I was giving you this example of the healthcare data since Kishore sent us there. So when I'm showing the BP, then something looks different, and then they say that's really not an outlier. So the easiest thing is, should we erase the outlier? You see an outlier, hey, that theory is wrong, and so that's not real. So we'll erase the outlier. So they're not going to erase that out of my medical records, but when they are looking at that medical record as an AI to act on it, it is easy to say that let's ignore that. That's an outlier, and that's just an anomaly. That's not anything. Let's move on. So this is actually done really in a good way by engineers, not by the business people. So one of the things that happens in the AI world is anytime you talk to a team, they have different point of view of how they're looking at the data, how they're defining the problem, a lot of things. So why is this a good thing, and where would the engineers use it? The technology teams, where they are using AI and anomaly detection, use it. Whereas a business person, when they would say, I don't know, why did that happen one time? We should not erase that. But it's very common for the tech people to do that. Have you seen that? If anybody has seen, I would like you to, share that experience. So just to keep up on time, I want to move on. I'm going to give you the answer anyway. So one of the common ways anomaly detection is used is when you're creating data for machine learning models. You get the data and then you try to remove the very obvious outliers. And that's how you actually run anomaly detection on your own data, to just prune out the outliers which doesn't add meaningfully, and to get clean data. Because the more outliers, you cannot fit a model if you have this random outlier sitting here, because that will skew your data. That will skew your overall model. So it is very easy, it's very commonly done to just get clean training data. To even get your training data, you can run an anomaly detection to prune out the outliers, and then say, now you have clean data, now I'm going to fit a model. And that's a common thing that is being done. Not when solving a business problem, just getting the training data. So that's a very common area that you use anomaly detection. Now I'm going to move forward. The different kind of anomaly detection, the fraud purchase we were talking about, or that is a point, right? That you buys at a certain amount. Suppose I withdraw $1,000. That's not a common pattern of how I would do. So I get alerts from all my credit cards beyond a certain threshold, because that threshold is they're looking for it as a fraud pattern. And then they'll say, hey, this is not normal behavior. I need to alert the customer and see whether they did. And sometimes they actually lock an account because they see an abnormal behavior. Or I'm used to, shopping from US because I live here. And when I'm traveling, my credit card can get locked because it was just one. It was, now the transaction was happening from a different place. So it could be a point that looks like a fraud, right? That's a very common thing for a fraud. That's a point anomaly. Contextual anomaly is, when there is anomaly but holiday shopping, and so there's going to be a huge spike because it's holiday season, and so you look out for that. So one of the things you plan for is you look at the context and you say, I will reduce for seasonality. So maybe this is Valentine's Day and there is an expected spike. So we would remove normalize your data for seasonality, so that that spike goes away, and then you still look for patterns. The third one is called collective. It's easier to show you a visual where there is a pattern here, and then there is anomaly of another. It doesn't even have to be one or two. It could be another cluster here. So if it is a normal data point and then here is an anomaly data point, it is not a single point. It could be a bunch of data. So you look for different kind of patterns to basically understand the anomaly, and you need to understand this from the context of your business. Okay, so I was talking about there are two terms in here. One is what is normal, and then what is a deviation. So my withdrawing twice is okay, but if I'm withdrawing third time in a row, that's an anomaly, and that is something that's causing a spike. But then we spoke about if like my nest is giving a lot of shadows and I'm ignoring it. So in this case, if you see all these are data points which are anomalies, right? The 30 or the 20 or the 70 is an anomaly. But because 90 is spiking up, you would look at this graph and say, hey, the anomaly is 90. So now if I remove this 90 away, then maybe this 70 and the 30 would get attention. So they are not lost. Okay. So those all feed into our thinking of how we are going to give training data. That is what I'm arriving at. So we are going to give training data, and the training data is what is going to train the model. So Anodot is one company which is very well known for their anomaly detection platform. So this picture is thanks to them. And so basically they have a 5-step process. I'm going to give you the 3 steps because that's what I've been talking about in our examples today. So one is to understand what is normal, right? So that is the first piece. And the second thing is to understand what is abnormal, right? And what is and then in understanding the abnormal, it is not just about one data points. That in the healthcare example, in the agriculture example, fraud detection, all of them we were talking about, here is the metric and this metric spiked. And so even here, it could be one metric that is actually showing this multiple spikes, right? But what if there are multiple metrics, like the healthcare example of, it's not just your temperature, but whether you have a cold, whether all the different, each of them could be a metric, and there are going to be thousands of metrics. And so now, if you have a cold and a cough and you have fever, then something is wrong. Maybe you have the flu. And in that case, there is a relationship among the metrics. Again, as a business person, it is on us to define the metrics, define what an anomaly, what is normal, and give what is abnormal. If you do not give training data that defines what is abnormal, like Dalton was saying, the system cannot go, the system cannot catch it. It will show you a lot of different spikes for a lot of different metrics. And then now, if certain metrics are related, and then with that, the combination of that is going to spike and show you an anomaly, then that would be something to look out for. So then it leads to some kind of diagnosis. Okay, so I'm going to go back out of here to look at YouTube to see your questions or comments. So what we spoke about, we are reaching the end of our time. So I hope that was helpful for you to, get your training data to understand the different kind of anomalies. And I want to hear from people who are already here listening, whether you have seen anomalies in your world, or what would you use to define your anomalies. And if you're doing this using, instead of doing a regular model, you're going to give some kind of unsupervised model. And other than, I showed you Anodot because I think they do a fabulous job. Amazon has a way by which you can do anomaly detection. There are models that you can call readily. I believe Microsoft has some. So there could be, anomaly detection that you're using different systems. So what is a normal behavior learning? What is abnormal behavior learning? Those are the two we did. And then how do you combine the different metrics? It's called behavioral topology learning. When I showed you that blue pyramid saying 3 steps, I don't think the words were readable. Thank you for pointing that. So it's behavioral topology learning. Basically, you're trying to see what are the metrics that are related that you're going to be tracking for. So that becomes important. So we spoke about anomaly detection, which is basically looking for an outlier. And from a data modeling perspective, to build the AI model, you have to do, all you can do, the way you can communicate with your AI is only using data. So you're going to feed training data. And thank you for that, Dalton. So you're going to feed training data, and in the training data, you're going to define what is normal, what is abnormal. You're going to be very sensitive to what is a deviation from normal, and the duration is how many times it happens. And those are the two variables you're going to look for when you're feeding the data to train the anomaly model. And then you're looking for defining what is normal behavior, what is abnormal behavior. And for the business use case, we spoke about agriculture, we spoke about fraud detection. I gave this example, and Kishore gave this healthcare data. We spoke about the security camera catching something. We started out with the sun on my face, showing what is non-standard image that is that I'm looking. So that example of where you saw the sun on my face and you don't see it on the face, the same thing could be the computer vision that that you're seeing on a plant, that you're seeing the plant is showing some kind of disease behavior, and so maybe it needed to be weeded out. So that kind of thing. So all of that comes to training data. So as business people, you have to give training data. As a product person, you have to understand what you're solving for, and based on that, identify what the metrics are. The behavioral topology is, behavioral topology learning is, what are the combination of metrics? When they come together, they're going to inform something. Then based on that, you have to actually look out for anomaly. Again, within that, you're looking for a certain deviation or a duration. So that's how you do that. And we've reached the end of our hour. So thank you so much. This was fun. I'm not going to be continuing on our LinkedIn chat today. I need to go back to finish up my book and get it out. And I'm in the final stages of literally like the last stages of the book stuff are like, not even the writing part. So it'll be interesting to just get those things out of the way. So before we go, somebody commented that when I showed the book cover, I just showed the robot holding the book cover, which is a beautiful picture that my intern Nan had got for me. I wanted to show you just the cover that Tanvi had made. So I'm going back to Zoom to show you that. Okay, just a minute. Where is my Zoom window, guys, where I can share the screen? Yeah, I see it now. So this is the real cover. Just this is the front part of the cover. Isn't this beautiful? I just love it. Okay, so if you go to my site, and I have a new site with my name, sudhajamthe.com, you can actually sign up, tell your friends, and I'm going to give a free chapter if somebody signs up and wants to be, notified. So before you launch, if you're eagerly waiting, then I'm eagerly waiting for this to be done so that I can just, go back to my normal life. But thank you so much. With that, I'm going to wrap up. And thank you, everybody. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Charles. Thank you. Yes, Tanvi has done a fantastic job. She's my designer. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you next week. And I want feedback, because this is a different approach I'm taking an algorithm and then trying to come with understanding the training data. I can just show you screens of data and just keep walking through that. But hearing examples from you is, more refreshing, because the whole idea is I want to know what people are working on, what challenges they're facing, and develop the lesson plan with that. So I hope you got to learn about anomaly detection and your role as a business and product person, and what does it mean, and different kind of anomaly detections. And for those of you who are working on this or learning this and want to know about, what are the different tools and where you can go play with this, I'm happy to give you resources. And so you can ping me on LinkedIn and or on Driverless World School, where you connected from. So both are options where you can connect with me. With that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Yes, thank you for your compliments. Thanks, everybody. Omkar is saying thanks. And yes, Kishore says nice cover. Thank you, Kishore. I've been talking about the book for so long with some of you. And so the Vigorsoft team has actually shared a case study. So we'll see. Okay, with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you. Bye, everybody.